Hello, everyone, and welcome to another ACE Committee webinar. Today, we will be discussing the gender spectrum. We are born as who we are. The gender thing is something that is imposed on you. Laverne Cox. A brief history of gender equity progress in Canada. In 1916, women in Manitoba became the first in Canada to win the right to vote. Then, in 1929, women are declared as persons by the British Privy Council. In 1977, the Canadian Human Rights Act was passed, forbidding discrimination on the basis of sex and ensuring equal pay for work of equal value for women. In 2012, Ontario was the first province to allow trans people to change their gender on official documents without first having gender reaffirming surgery. In 2017, Bill C-16 was passed, adding gender identity and expression to the Canadian Human Rights Act to the prohibited grounds of discrimination. Gender versus sex. What is the difference? Despite commonly thought, someone's sex and their gender are actually two distinct things. Sex refers to the physical differences, genetic makeup, genitalia, that are assigned at birth. It's also known as natal sex, and these could be female, male, or intersex. Now, the term intersex is a general term used for a variety of situations in which a person is born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fit the boxes of female or male, but rather a combination of the two. Gender. Rather than physical characteristics, gender refers to the behavioral, cultural, or psychological traits typically associated with one's sex. Gender identity refers to a person's internal sense of being male, female, some combination, or even neither. Now, gender roles are expectations placed on us of how to act, speak, dress, and comport ourselves based on our assigned sex. Contrary to many beliefs, gender does not come in two categories, male and female, but rather it is a broad spectrum. Individuals identify, express, and portray their gender in different ways. The ways that they express themselves influence self-perception, how we choose others to perceive us, and our interactions. It is extremely important to remember that gender exists along a continuum and can change through someone's life. In summary, sex refers to an anatomical, physiological differences at birth, whereas gender captures individual identities, role in society, and expression, such as voice, clothing, behavior, etc. The evolution of gender versus sex. American psychologist Lauren Kohlberg created a theory known as gender constancy, in which he believed that there was a stage in a child's cognitive development in which their gender, at the time, gender was still representative of biological sex, became fixed. However, today we have come to understand and scientifically proven that gender is not binary or static, but rather, gender is a reflection of one's identities that can change over time and throughout someone's life. The genderbread person model helps to differentiate between gender and sex and portray that gender is not either or. It's not binary, male or female, but rather a spectrum that can change throughout someone's life. It does so through 5 key spectrums: gender identity, the brain, gender expression, like clothes, what's on the outside, biological sex, and attraction, the heart. Gender identities, gender variance, and pronouns. Gender and sexual variance has been around since the beginning of time and has been historically recognized in many different parts of the world. Hijras. With thousands of years of documented history, Hijras in Southern Asia may be considered trans or intersex by outsiders. In 2014, the Supreme Court of India followed precedents in Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh in recognizing Hijras as a legally designated third gender. Two-Spirit. Navajo tribes recognize 4 genders, using the terms Nadlihi for those who transform into femininity and Dilba for those who transform into masculinity. Feminilio. Documented in paintings from as early as the 18th century. Il femminile were individuals assigned male at birth who dressed and behaved like women in Naples, Italy. Gender variance can be seen throughout time and through different cultures and perspectives. Gender identities. There are many different gender identities that people use to describe their gender. Some of the most common include transgender, which is an umbrella or overall term used to describe someone whose gender doesn't match what they were assigned at birth. Transgender is most known for being used to describe binary trans people, people who transition from male to female or female to male. However, many non binary people also use it to describe their gender. Some trans people seek out gender reaffirming surgery as a part of their transition, while others do not. Cisgender. Cisgender is an identity used to describe someone whose gender matches what sex they were assigned at birth. Non-binary is another umbrella term used for someone whose gender falls outside of the binary, male or female. There are many identities that fall under the non-binary umbrella because it's a spectrum that people use to describe their gender. But some people also use non-binary as their identity to say that they are not completely male or female, but rather a combination or neither. What are some of the non-binary identities? Agender is someone who identifies as genderless. Gender fluid is someone whose gender changes, and these changes can occur frequently or infrequently. It truly depends on the person. Genderqueer can fall under the non-binary umbrella, but can also be an umbrella term for someone who does not identify with the binary genders, again, male or female. Bigender is an identity under the non-binary umbrella to describe someone who identifies with two genders. What are pronouns? Pronouns are words that people use to refer to other people. For example, his, her, their, they. And pronouns are not equivalent to gender. They don't have to match one another necessarily. Pronouns can be an important part of expressing and respecting one's gender identity. Many people assume people's pronouns based on their outward appearance and/or biological sex rather than asking. Now, pronouns are not fixed. Some non-binary people may use non-binary pronouns, for example, they, them, while others may use binary pronouns, she, her, or a mix, she, they. Why are pronouns important? Using someone's preferred pronouns supports or affirms their gender identity. It also creates an inclusive and welcoming environment. So, using someone's pronouns correctly can help reduce the impact of societal oppression. Gender stereotypes are a huge part of society and can often discriminate and create a harmful environment for those who are outside of society's quote unquote norms. So, the power in pronouns. Do not assume someone's pronouns as it might send a negative message. As I said, assumptions reinforce gender stereotypes based on appearance. Ignoring someone's pronouns altogether can imply that their identity does not exist, which can be both offensive and hurtful. Someone's pronouns can change over time to reflect their understanding of their identity, so we must be mindful of this. Multiple pronouns. Many people use multiple pronouns as a part of their identity. These can be in combinations like he, they, she, they, it, etc. These combinations can mean multiple things, so it's always good to ask the person how they want their pronouns to be used. Some people might use different pronouns depending on the day, but some people want each pronoun to be used equally. For example, they want to be called she half the time and they half the time. Some people want you to mostly use one pronoun, but a bit of another one. It depends from person to person, so the best way to make sure you are using someone's pronouns correctly is to ask them politely. Neopronouns. Neopronouns are alternate pronouns that someone might use instead of more common pronouns. Someone may use neopronouns because no other set of pronouns fits them, and they want another neutral option other than they, them. Some more common examples of neopronouns include ze, er, am, and xe. Neopronouns can be whatever people want them to be, so there are infinite sets of pronouns someone could use. It's important to respect someone's pronouns, even if you've never heard them before. Now I'll be talking about gender discrimination, so modern day issues faced by gender minorities. Trans discrimination. In the year 2021, it has been a record year for anti-transgender legislation. 33 states in the US have introduced more than 100 bills that aim to restrict the rights of transgender people, including barring them from public washrooms and barring trans children from competing on sports teams. Advocacy from LGBTQ plus activist groups, businesses, athletes, and child health/welfare groups have strongly opposed anti-transgender legislation due to discrimination and harmful consequences. Anti-transgender legislation is very expensive. The Associated Press projected that the North Carolina bathroom bill could have cost the state $3.76 billion over 10 years. This is money that could have been better spent supporting the LGBTQ2S+ community. It is clear through these few examples that anti-trans legislation will only lead to more harm and hate for the LGBTQ2S+ community. Sexism and discrimination against women. 160 Canadian women and girls were killed by violence in 2020, which is a rise from 2019. 1.5 million plus women live in poverty in Canada. 10 times more women than men have fallen out of the labor force in 2020. 76.8 cents is the average earned by full-time Canadian working women for every dollar that men make. All of these facts show us that there is a gap in genders, specifically between what is considered men and women. More Canadian discrimination facts. Individuals in the LGBTQ2S+ community are almost 3 times more likely to be victims of violence than heterosexual people. Transgender Canadians are more likely than cisgender Canadians to experience violence and harassment. Transgender Canadians are also more likely to report fair mental health and suicide thoughts than cisgender Canadians. Racialized trans and non-binary people are more likely to receive all forms of violence and harassment, at least 4% more than non-racialized respondents. In 2020, 1 of 3 of trans and non-binary people of color reported having been sexually assaulted within the last 5 years. How can we be good allies to those who experience gender discrimination? Allyship. First, we can make our language more inclusive. Consider adding your pronouns to your social media biography, your email signature, your Zoom meeting ID, and other things. You can also change your language in everyday life. Instead of saying hello guys or hello girls, say hello everyone. Also be mindful of correcting others when they make a mistake. If you're around someone who makes a mistake when using someone's pronouns, the best thing to do is correct them. Especially when the person isn't there, it's important to use their correct pronouns. Learning. One of the best and easiest ways to be a good ally is to learn and listen. Learning about different identities and listening to people's lived experiences can help to understand what gender diverse people go through on a day-to-day basis. As the video discussed, if you accidentally use the wrong pronoun, apologize, correct yourself, and continue. For example, they were going to the library. Dwelling on a mistake or continuous apologies can create an awkward, uncomfortable situation. However, it is extremely important not to ignore your mistake and respect the person's correct pronouns. Safety concerns. Knowing when it's safe to use someone's pronouns. Many trans people and non-binary people haven't come out to certain people in their lives for many reasons. Maybe they feel that it's unsafe or they are not ready. If someone has not told their family or anyone in their lives their correct pronouns, it's a good idea to talk to them beforehand to know when to use their correct pronouns. Sometimes you may need to use their incorrect pronouns for their safety. In this situation, again, it's best to talk to the person beforehand to make sure you are respecting them while ensuring their privacy and safety. More ways to show support. You can donate to or volunteer at organizations and nonprofits that support women, those in the LGBTQ2S+ community, and genderqueer youth and/or adults by providing education, resources, and helplines. You can also watch movies and listen to podcasts or read articles by genderqueer and trans people to educate yourself and stay updated. It's also extremely important that these perspectives and voices are heard. Spread the word and educate others in your life who may not have as much knowledge about the gender spectrum and/or gender discrimination. Make sure that your feminism is inclusive and intersexual and includes the voices and concerns of non-cisgender and non-white people. Further learning. So here are a few other resources if you want to continue exploring and trying to make yourself a better ally by furthering your learning. Thank you for listening.